Just when we come on to questions and comments, the honourable member from Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my honourable colleague from Thornhill for her speech. Like all Canadians, I sat there on Friday night and I saw what was going on in my hometown of Montreal and was absolutely disgusted by the display of a lawless mob that was destroying such a beautiful city. In fact, it's happening right across the country, Mr. Speaker, and it's escalating. It's escalating, and Canadians are becoming increasingly concerned about this escalation. So my question to my honourable colleague is, what can we do about it?
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the very basic thing that any government can do about this is to signal that it's wrong. And we can't even expect that from this government. The Prime Minister danced the night away and waited until noon the next day to say anything about the lawless behaviour in his own city. The very start of this should be at least a condemnation, should be to make sure that these rioters, not peaceful protesters, but these rioters, face the full extent of the law. There is a very clear line between protest in this country and lawless mob behavior. And that line was crossed on Friday night and on many other weekends in this country where people feel unsafe in their own communities. Terrorist cosplay, flags of terrorist organizations flying in neighborhoods where Jewish communities live. Any government would say that's unacceptable, but leadership would say that it's absolutely unacceptable and those people should be arrested.
Questions and comments. The honourable member from Dufferin-Caledon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the member wants to comment a little bit further on the absolute explosion of hate that's happening in this country, particularly directed at the Jewish community, the open display of terrorist symbols, and the lack of action or condemnation from a Liberal government. We are seeing unprecedented hatred directed towards the Jewish community in our country, and the response from the government, I think, has been absolutely abysmal, and I wonder if the member wants to comment on that.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, I've spoken about this many, many times in the House, and the reason I've spoken about it so many in the House is because it's not only the people that I represent in Thornhill, but it's communities right across the country that are reaching out in hopes that somebody is listening to their plight. There have been firebombings into businesses, gunshots into schools, riots on a weekly basis in cities across the country. People have been made to feel unsafe in their neighborhoods. And instead of just even the weakest condemnation, it's actually worse. The government has inflamed this, has inflamed it with their rhetoric. We have the member from York Centre, a minister of this crown, who held hands with a literal terrorist who is in the 19th year of his 4-year term, who has a martyrs fund that rewards terrorists for killing people who fight from her own riding. You have a pretend envoy on issues of anti-Semitism who speaks out against the Prime Minister and says all of the right things in the community, but doesn't have a seat at the table and is frankly ignored. I think the community looks at that government and wonders, what the heck happened? This used to be a government that stood for moral clarity and on the right side of history and to protect a community, and this government is nowhere to be found. And it is a shame for everybody who is watching, not only the Jewish community, but every freedom-loving, law-abiding Canadian that sees this.